All right, so good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Tock's latest webinar, Diversifying Your Revenue Streams. We are excited to have you join us. My name is Melissa Maciejewski, and I'm part of Tock's account management team. I've been with Tock for the past 4 years now, but prior to that, I've had over a decade of experience working front of house and managing reservations in both casual and Michelin-starred restaurants. For those joining us that aren't familiar with our platform, Tock was built by restaurants for restaurants, offering that perfect blend of technology and hospitality. With flat pricing, zero per cover fees, and the industry's lowest no-show rates, you can manage everything in one place, including reservations, events, and takeout. Think of Tock as the ultimate sales engine, allowing your business to drive revenue from multiple avenues. And today's webinar will be about exactly that. We'll be sharing tips, tricks, and some inspiration on how to diversify the revenue streams at your business. We'll review the tools that Tock provides to switch up your everyday reservations. And we'll hear from our panelists today about the variety of unique experiences that they've offered at their businesses. You'll learn the benefits of thinking beyond just your standard reservations, how to identify those great ideas that will keep your team engaged, but also boost your bottom line. And we'll talk about marketing tactics to get your guests excited about what you're offering. We'll also be touching on how to evaluate your experiences to decide how effective they really were. And of course, all of our panelists will be sharing some of their personal success stories. Before we do get started with introductions, I want to call attention to the Q&A feature at the bottom of your Zoom screen. Throughout the webinar, feel free to add any questions you have, and I'll be sure to save some time to address them at the end. Now, I'm very pleased to introduce you to today's panelists. John Rosenberg is the General Manager at Supperland in Charlotte, North Carolina. Milton Mednick is the General Manager at Pearl Morissette in Southern Ontario. And Andrew Elder is the General Manager at Jaunt in Washington, D.C. All right, so thank you three for joining us today. I'm really excited about today's discussion because I think, even before we get to the different types of experiences that you all are offering, your respective teams have done an incredible job at leveraging, the unique qualities of each of your businesses. So for all of our viewers that aren't familiar, would you guys mind sharing just a quick overview of your different concepts? And John, maybe we can start with you and Supperland.
Sure. My name is John. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm the general manager at Supperland. We are a unique concept. So we're a Southern steakhouse, kind of meets church potluck. So we are in 2 old buildings, both old restored churches. And the restaurant itself is kind of built off of the buildings. So we take that steakhouse concept, weave in some of the old church history and what people would do and how they would like to celebrate in old church potlucks. We also have a smaller building that is a cocktail bar with a fantastic cocktail program and a 10-seat speakeasy that does 6 to 7 different tasting menus, all cocktail tasting menus paired with food from our kitchen team, and rotate that every 6 to 10 weeks.
Excellent. And Milton, will you tell us a little bit about Pearl Morissette?
Sure. So my name is Milton from Pearl Morissette in the Niagara region in Ontario. Our project started in 2007 as a winery and a vineyard operation. And we since launched a fine dining restaurant about 6 years ago on the 2nd floor of a modern black barn. Our property is a 60-acre farm. So we're a winery, a restaurant, and a farm with about 1.5 acres of produce growing. We have an on-site farming team and a forager who grows all sorts of herbs. And our approach is a blind tasting menu. So it's about a 10+ course tasting menu. As a destination restaurant, everything is served blind. We just take upfront dietary restrictions, and we kind of walk the guests through a journey over the course of a 2.5 to 3 hour meal. In addition, we launched a bakery, around the corner in Jordan Village, about 2 to 3 minutes away. And that's a bit of our more accessible approach. And we can talk through some of the different ways we've been leveraging Tock to incorporate that into the restaurant experience.
Excellent. And last but not least, Andrew.
Hi, so Andrew, obviously, and I oversee Jaunt in DC, and quite the opposite of the other two operations. We are in a old nightclub, and we only have 16 seats, not 60 acres. So a very small operation that we run, and we're only been operating for 2.5 years now. So we turned 3 this summer, or the end of this summer rather. So chef's counter experience similar to Pro Morset, where it is a tasting menu. You don't really know what you're going to have until you sit down and get a menu at the end. Everything is prepared in front of you. The plateware is glassware. Everything is washed, and you see everything. We kind of break down the wall between the dining room and the kitchen and experience. We're really focused on guest engagement, one-on-one. We're pretty equal when it comes to staff and guests, so it's that allows us to have a really fun time and pay an homage as well to the nightclub where we're located in by playing old school 90s hip hop and early 2000s music. So it's a pretty fun space.
I always love the juxtaposition of fine dining and cool music, nightclub vibes as well.
Very different.
Great. So I was excited about this topic today, diversifying revenue, because I think honestly, it can be just as energizing for your staff as it is about, maybe the bottom line of your business. I was thinking about when I still worked service, I loved doing those guest chef dinners because even starting with prep, the energy in the restaurant felt so different compared to just that standard day of service. So I'd like to start off by talking about some successes outside of just your standard reservations. Can each of you share, maybe some things that you've tried that have worked really well, either because guests love them or, your staff had a great time?
Yeah, so I can touch on that. We've done, especially around holidays, is when we really start to expand and experience with different avenues of utilizing Tock for that. So we between Thanksgiving and New Year's, we do a lot of luxury to-go items, so to speak. So caviar tarts, foie gras tarts, urchin displays, that kind of thing. And utilizing Tock is basically an experience that you kind of book, and you book the day you want to pick it up, and instead of a time slot for reservation, you're deciding on the time slot to pick up your experience. And of course, using the prepay feature as well is super beneficial in tracking what sold last year versus what we're going to do this year, and things like that is really helpful and really successful for us.
We've used Tock for those types of experience where we can do prepays, and really events are the biggest win for us, where there's being able to take your guests, being able to understand who they are and run something that's a one-off. So we're doing a yearly rosé party that happens in our outdoor areas. We hosted about 120 guests for all you can drink rosé, past bites, and it takes advantage of our team, of the people that we have in our restaurant. We have an advanced sommelier on staff, and Michael's fantastic, and he's able to really, throughout the year, cultivate relationships with people, and then we use those relationships to offer a one-off to our guests in that rosé party. We can do that with a Pinot Noir party, and the beautiful ground that we're on, have a little bit of fun with it. And all you can drink rosé, people dress up, tailor the food to that one-off day, similar to what Melissa was saying earlier. It gets our staff really happy about it. The creativity is great. Put a bunch of flowers and roses out there. Everybody's dressing in beautiful attire, and who doesn't want to, sit in the middle of springtime and have 16 great rosés?
Yeah, sign me up.
So one of the ways we use Tock today is at the point of booking when reservations get released, which we release every month. We're doing one tomorrow for August. At the time of booking, our guests will be able to make the reservation. And then before checkout, we offer the chance to add wine pairings or garden pairings, which are our juice offering at that time. What's also really unique is we've offered what's called a garden tour, where because so much of the produce is grown on our property, we really like to build that connection and that engagement with the guest beforehand. So we offer this hour-long tour in the garden with our farmer, who walks them through our various plots and kind of shows, like, what are we growing? What's the connection between what he's doing, how the chefs are ultimately taking those ingredients and showing you as the end result on the plate. And so we offer this additional experience as an add-on an hour before dinner. So that's one way we're at the point of booking. We've found different ways to add revenue streams and just increase kind of the basket size when the guest is checking out. Just going back a few years, because we've been with Tock for several years now, when the pandemic hit, we kind of repurposed the business model. The restaurant here in Canada was closed down for several different stretches. And so we had a couple different pivots. One was we offered a country market where we started offering products as a middleman between the farmers we work closely with and our end users. So we created these different options where people could offer either takeout or come on site to pick up. And then we also started doing these at-home experiences where we did this bi-weekly subscription. It was 4 dinners over the course of 2 months, sold it via Tock. And it was this same idea, multi-course tasting menu, some wine from our portfolio. And it was this all-in-one purchase that they made. And we used Tock to kind of delineate if it was a Toronto delivery, if it was an on-site pickup, or a location in the middle. So we've kind of played with different channels through Tock.
Yeah, I think it's interesting that all 3 of you have businesses that are in almost multi-purpose locations. And, Milton, you mentioned that Restaurant Pearl Morissette functions as a winery, a farm, an orchard, a garden. There are lots of different things going on, but at the same time, the restaurant is, absolutely destination dining. So when you're thinking about what types of experiences to put up on Tock, are you envisioning that your guests are, maybe going to spend the whole weekend with you, or are you trying to do a little bit of everything to maybe appeal to different types of people, or, how many regulars do you have?
We do have a bunch of regulars that come up. A lot of our clientele comes from Toronto, which is about an hour and a half drive from where we are in Jordan, Ontario. Definitely, though, that is our approach, right? We've got people making a weekend out of it. And the idea is, how do we kind of have their mind share for more than the 2.5-hour dining experience? So we offer hour-long wine tastings in the cellar directly with the production team through Tock as well as one idea. We offer these, garden tours. What we've done now is we've encouraged guests, hey, after you come for dinner or for lunch, head over to the bakery. We can take care of a prepaid box, sourdough, a couple of baked goods, maybe some bottles of wine to go, and we'll take care of that in advance so you can grab that, maybe grab a coffee on your way back to the city. And then vice versa, using the bakery and the bistro as almost like an intro point to introduce what we're up to and say, hey, if you want to go over and see where a lot of that produce is grown or see where the wines are made, come visit the winery and make a weekend out of it and have one of the experiences there. So we've definitely thought through that. We're actually launching this weekend. It's the first Saturday. We're doing our first workshops. So we have an on-site, her title is Plant Wizard. She's an expert forager, and she's going to be doing this, 2-hour-long workshop. We kept it really intimate, I think 8 or 10 people, but it's going to be an in-depth, how to make flowers, arrangements, and bouquets, because she does all of our on-site decor right inside the greenhouse. And we'll engage with our guests in that way so they can understand how that part of the business comes to life. So 100% we want to be more than just a dinner stop for our guests.
Yeah, absolutely. John, I know you spoke about that as well, kind of getting to know your guests and feeling out the different types of experiences that they're interested in. Does that affect the way that you think about your programming, specific guests, or just trying to widely appeal to the community?
So, of course it does. You never want to put an event, a reservation, anything that doesn't appeal to your clientele, because it makes it harder to sell that experience. So you have to know who that person is, number one. But we run really 4 reservations all the time. So we have a brunch service, our main dining room service, which includes a standard reservation, and our chef's counter reservation that is 9 seats directly in front of our grill. And then we'll have our speakeasy events, which is that 10-seat tasting menu I'm talking about. So each of those events will cater, or each of those reservations caters to a different clientele, but they can also overlap with each other. So if somebody's really interested in our tasting menu, Tock's landing page will go to all of those other reservations. So a guest that might be specifically looking for that experience might see that we offer a brunch buffet or a standard reservation with a different menu. And then we can have little feelers and fingers out that make sure that those guests might stay on property and make a night that's 3, 4, 5 hours out of it. They might see some information about our cocktail bar that's just, oh, great, I want to come for 30 or 45 minutes there and have a cocktail before I come to dinner. And it's a great way that we can really show all of our experience to a guest that might just know about one or the other, and be able to have people that visit for more than one reason, whether that's in a specific weekend or over the course of 6 months or a year.
Yeah, I love the idea of sort of or curating a whole experience. If they do just stop in for a drink or whatever, if you can keep them for multiple hours, that's such a great feeling. You've delivered.
That's what Supperland came for. We wanted it to be a place that people spend time. You might go to the cocktail bar, then have dinner. You might go to the speakeasy and then have a cocktail. You might have dinner and then enjoy dessert while you're sitting at the cocktail bar. And we want the entire night to be your experience, to be able to be sit in the restaurant for the entire night. And we can curate that as what guests are doing, and not dinner's not what you're doing before your event. If you're coming to Supperland, that is the event for the evening.
Love that. So Andrew, you also kind of work in a multi-concept space, though they're, marketed as two different restaurants. Bresca and Jaunt are in the same building.
Yeah. So yeah, Bresca's downstairs. They had opened up 5 years ago, and they opened using Resi originally, and then switched over to Tock with a lot of ease in the operation system, both on the back end as well as booking from the guest perspective. And then, of course, when Jaunt opened, we just immediately started using Tock. The biggest kind of difference between the space, both Michelin-starred restaurants, Bresca being 1 star and Jaunt being 2 stars, we definitely utilize the reservation system at Bresca similarly to Supperland, where you want to come have a drink before dinner. Well, Jaunt doesn't have a bar; it's just the chef's counter. So we would book a reservation for the guest at the Bresca bar and reserve seats for them, and then kind of transfer their experience up into Jaunt. Kind of again utilizing that the space and the separation of a stairwell is the biggest difference.
I'm curious too, given that Jaunt is, 2 Michelin stars, small space, it does have a slightly higher price point. I think that sometimes that can, limit people's ability to be a little bit more playful with their events, just because you want to maintain, that high service standard. But on the other hand, it really gives you access to some cool collaborations. I know you guys have done, lots of collaboration dinners with well-respected chefs. You currently have a Krug dinner listed on your site. So are those partnerships something that you're actively seeking out, or does it just come to you?
Yes and no. We definitely, obviously, we partner with the concepts and the brands that we want and respect the most. And we're definitely, speaking of Krug, definitely a Krug house, or we are the first Krug ambassade in DC. So we do partner with different champagne and wine producers, as well as different chefs that use Tock and don't use Tock. But when we're building those experiences, they're marketed very differently. We use like the reservation side for dinners and events and that kind of thing, but we kind of reserve ourselves for using the actual event booking option for like the big grandiose events. So like usually we do cocktail collaborations on our days off. So kind of the obscure events is what we'll use the events page for. And then of course, requiring it, you mentioned the high price point definitely is the deposit feature. So we do require a deposit in order to book, but that deposit then does get taken, it does get added essentially to your final bill. So you're like prepaying $50 a person, but then you basically have a $50 gift card at that point to add to your bill. So using that definitely does help.
Yeah, helps with that high price point if you forget what you've already paid. I've been there. I'm glad you mentioned marketing, because I did want to touch on that as well. When you are doing a particular event, what strategies have you all used to, get it in front of guests?
Well, I mean, social media, obviously, that's the biggest thing, and then just using the Tock platform and certain keywords essentially is definitely a big factor. So whether it's wine tasting or cocktail event or chef collab, we definitely do get a lot of hits from people searching keywords. And then again, as I mentioned, the kind of one-off events that we're really trying to highlight, that's when we utilize the events feature, the separate page with its own pictures, its own kind of preview of what to expect. And then our kind of monthly wine dinners or chef dinner, that kind of thing, is when we fold that into the reservation. So the Krug and Lemon event you mentioned, that's under reservations. But every 2 or 3 months or so, we have basically a preview of a cocktail collab or cocktail bar we're opening in the future. That's not a business yet. It's not a brick and mortar yet, but it will be this fall. So we're using that event page to highlight the Press Club experience, what it's called, to partner with local bars as well as bars from around the world. So jaunt events, reservations, and then kind of highlighting our space to utilize as a host, so to speak, for Press Club. And then that's when it's as an event and kind of marketing it to the different avenues. Social media, of course, is a huge one, monthly emails and that kind of thing.
Yeah, and Milton, it seems like you use your space similarly, where the branding for the bakehouse is quite different, of course, from the branding on the restaurant and the winery. So do you have a marketing team?
We have a marketing manager who oversees all of our communications and our marketing and our social channels. We utilize our mailing list as probably the #1 driver of keeping people posted on just what's going on update wise. So whether it's a special release for Mother's Day, or just like we did an email today as an example where we announced reservations for August. And as part of that, we talked about, it's patio season over at the bakery. We just released this kind of prepaid box that diners can now buy of baked goods. We talked again about some of the garden workshops. So it's about once a month where we'll utilize the mailing list as the kind of the core driver to announce what's going on. And then that'll filter through our social media channels as well.
I'm curious, how do you make a decision on how often to send out that emails? You said once a month, and I think sometimes businesses struggle with deciding how frequently to send out communication.
It's a great question. So our businesses are a bit different. The winery, which started a long time ago, and we're a boutique producer, max 10,000 cases a year. We focus much more on less is more. We're never trying to sell with our newsletter, and it's maybe 4 to 5 times a year. So very, very infrequent, always trying to add value, educate, share something new. Never huge call to action buttons, book now, buy this. That's never been the approach of the winery. The restaurant, which is obviously a 12-month-a-year business, it's more frequent. We've toyed with Tock and our release schedule over the last 5 years. We've now settled on we'll release reservations every 2 months. So tomorrow is our release for August, and then beginning of next month will be the release of September, and we kind of book in 2-month blocks. And that's been a trial and error thing. We've done 3 months before, we've done just 1 month before, but we've kind of settled on that being a good amount of lead time, also not bringing in too much predictable revenue because we charge the full menu price up front. Just being in farm country, that was an important thing, an important learning early on, where a $20 deposit alone wasn't enough to deter somebody from no showing, and we don't have walk-in traffic to accommodate for a no show. So it's been a bit of trial and error trying to figuring out that cadence.
Got it. John, I thought you had sort of some interesting marketing pieces. I want to point out that Supperland has gotten accolades from Bon Appetit and Esquire, in the past couple of years, but you also have gotten some attention for, working in these restored historic buildings, which, may not apply to everyone joining us on the call, but that's something, again, that you intentionally went after to market the space.
Sure. So that's part of the restaurant group. We have 5 concepts now, working on a 6th, and all of them are in older buildings. We don't typically look for new construction. It doesn't fit. And a lot of the concept comes from the building. Even the branding through Instagram channels, social media ties into that. The newest place we're opening, Alleluia Hall, we're going through construction in the build out now, and all of that's being documented on Instagram through YouTube. We have a new channel that's going there for the entire build out process. And that brings a different clientele of somebody that wants to see what happens, similar to the clientele that would be interested in an HGTV program. And then that clientele might want to come dine in the restaurant after they see the build out process. And you can see that Instagram gives great details of age groups of clients or age groups of followers, and whether they're male or female, and how many people are engaging with your posts. And we can tailor our events to the people that are going to see those things as well. And same thing, I think Milton and Andrew talked about being able to send out emails and keeping people updated on the restaurants there. Tock has a database that you can download anybody that's opted into those email marketing. And it's something that we can leverage to keep people updated, not of the daily things that are happening, not a special that's the restaurant is running, but if there's new menu items, if there's a new event that's going on, and making sure that we send out those email blasts to people that have opted in and are interested in our restaurants and whether it's the restaurant group or the specific restaurant is doing. If somebody's saying, yes, I want more information, it's our job to make sure that we're sending that to them.
Yeah, I like that both of you talked about how there is a little bit of almost trial and error when marketing to guests, whether it's reservation release, the cadence of your emails, what is actually resonating with different types of guests. I think it's okay to play around with a couple, different ideas to see what works.
It's always a communication between myself, our team that handles marketing. If we put a new event, whether that's in an Instagram story or an email, our job is to communicate between each other and say, hey, we can look at a specific day and we sent an email here. How many people booked a reservation? How many people saw? Where were they clicking through on that specific link? And if we can take that information and know what works for next time, what worked before, then we're always going to have better success in the future.
That's what hospitality is, listening to your guests, anticipating what they want. And, that shouldn't stop in the dining room. It maybe should apply to marketing as well. I do want to talk a little bit about, what happens when an idea for an event doesn't go well. We sort of started off with talking about successes, but have any of you had an idea for something that guests didn't respond to? Or how do you know maybe when it's time to throw the towel in on an idea if people aren't booking it? And I won't call on anyone specifically for this. You'll have to volunteer.
So we did have and have had a few. I mentioned the success of the wine dinners, but there are a few wine dinners we've had that didn't quite hit the ground running as much as we anticipated it. So being how we use our reservations, where it's just 2 flat seatings a night, we're able to open the evening for the event, and then 2 weeks out, a week out, if we're like, okay, it's not really beneficial to have 10 seats by 8 seats. That's just not real. So then we would just combine that and offer to reschedule and move them to 1 seating, and then operate the rest of the restaurant the rest of the evening as normal, and then kind of open up a flash booking, we call it. So it's pushing out to friends and family, or promoting open seats last minute, that kind of thing. But definitely being able to just move whichever the smaller booking is to the larger booking or larger seating has been the best kind of solution in those situations.
As long as the room feels good, that's all that matters.
Very similar to what Andrew said. There's always events that are going to sell more, sell quicker. There's things that are really easy that you flip a switch, the reservations are on sale, and immediately I look at it and I'm like, well, we're done. Marketing doesn't, have to push too hard. And a lot of those events are what people are going to think. We do a bourbon cocktail tasting. People love that. I think rum's a big one too, but we have a team that loves gin, that really, we might have 50 gins on our back door at some point in time. We did a gin garden cocktail tasting menu for 10 weeks, and such a passion project for our team. Some of the best food and cocktails we've put out, but it's not a spirit that people talk to that's of the moment. So it might have to be pushed more. That might be a bigger job for our marketing team to really find out what days that people are interacting with those things the best. Are we going to talk about it for a main dining room guest when our guests sitting there are serving team going to mention, hey, if you ordered a gin cocktail, let me tell you about this fantastic cocktail tasting menu we're doing in the building next door. And Melissa spoke to hospitality. That means driving our guests that are enjoying our programs in other parts of the restaurant and making sure that we market it in the restaurant as well, and they can enjoy those things. They might not know about it. We're going to be full. We're lucky to have a number of guests that want to get into our restaurant, but that doesn't mean that making sure we have new guest stops from the people that want to get or they're sitting in our building today. We want to grow that so everybody gets a chance to know and experience all of those offerings that we have.
Yeah, I think it definitely happens, right? You'll maybe get pricing wrong, or you'll get the date wrong, or the concept might not work, and then you're left, okay, well, how do we go about doing this? And you don't want to always just be on social, seats open, seats open. One thing that's really nice within Tock is, we've got a wait list on every day in terms of people that are trying to get in that don't, and we'll take pretty much a hustler approach, and we'll go through the list and we'll just start making phone calls, and we'll go down the list. Hey, you've been trying to get into the restaurant the next day. We've got this private event. So that's definitely one approach that we take. Another one, if we're doing maybe like a wine themed dinner or something along those lines, we'll either go through our list of regulars, we'll go through our list of, who are the top wine buyers of, say, a Chardonnay, if that's the theme of the dinner, and we'll get much more targeted with who we're going after. But again, phone call, email, just kind of an old school approach to letting people know without taking more of a mass market, in the public view approach.
Yeah, I think those are great tips because it's a little bit more manual, but the guest thinks that's incredible, to get a personalized phone call about the reservation that they missed out on. That feels like such white glove service, but from your perspective, you're filling a seat that you desperately need to.
It checks both boxes, right? It's all about how you handle that communication, but 100%, right? We want to let guests know we care about them, we're thinking about them, and we've thought about them specifically for this event because of their prior experiences with us.
Yeah, absolutely.
Actually, speaking to that, sorry, but also the tagging feature for tagging guests and adding notes, I think we've exhausted every single icon on Tock for some version of a tag, ranging from burgundy lover to cocktail lover to whiskey enthusiast to anything, and then using those tags and again searching them and finding the guests with those tags, and that's who we market the event to, or that's who we market this day reservation to. Has been super helpful.
I was hoping that there would be an entry to bring this up. I saw that you do dog treats for people who you discover have pets at home. I hope there's a tag for that as well. That's such a cool idea.
There's a bone icon, and that's there's also a fish icon, and we use that for cat treats. So there's dog treats and cat treats.
I'm a dog person, but yeah, equal opportunity.
I've been to John's and I was surprised with dog treats at the end of my meal.
I was late to that.
Andrew was fantastic. I was the best surprise at the end of the meal, and just a great touch of service they do.
Yeah, that was a really, really proud moment that came out of obviously COVID. Everyone's at home, and a lot more people were adopting animals, and then they would go back to their work and back to life and dine at restaurants, and they would be talking about how they got this dog, and we're like, okay, well, how can we incorporate what this person is passionate about? They're not just here celebrating an anniversary, they're going to go home, and we want them to keep talking about it. So obviously connect with their pet. So taking whether it's the scraps from our duck course, or the bones from the lamb, or whatever it is, and kind of incorporating that into small little bites that do change as our menu changes. So we have, like, for example, Murasaki sweet potato in a dessert course tonight. Well, all the skins and scraps from the potato go into a little quinoa potato biscuit for dogs now that we send home. So it's great cross utilization for hospitality, and then utilizing the full products that we have.
That's great. Those dogs are gonna the dog treats from Petco will no longer be acceptable. All right, so I do want to transition to some of the questions that came in while we were chatting. So let me take a look here. All right, so it looks like the first question is about staffing. So do you do anything differently when you're staffing, these special events? Do you have maybe a team that is good at handling, private events or collaboration dinners or whatever it is?
It's
So
different from event to event for us. I think it starts with Tock's great for us that we can do a lot of our events, and we do set up a lot of our events as prepaid, and that's going to include a service fee. So, I mean, we're a place that wants to give everybody that works for us a living wage, and it starts with knowing we're going to have a certain amount of revenue coming in, so we can set a staffing level, knowing each person that's working for us is going to be able to make a certain amount of money. And then from there, it varies from event to event. It doesn't, each event is a one-off. So we're going to sit in meetings. We're going to make sure that we know what the event looks like. Everybody's going to be planned a certain role. And most of the time, what that looks like is we overstaff by 1 or 2 people. We want the guest to get a perfect service. So if I say I need 5 people, I might say I'm going to staff 6 people just in case. There's a floater, there's somebody to do extra things. And that hits a point for me that means we're always going to give perfect service. I'm going to have an extra person. No one's going to be scrambling. And that's a collaboration with everybody on our team. I don't know exactly what's going to happen in a one-off event. It's not something that I plan for, that I know what's going to happen. I'll know a little bit better next year than I did the year before, but I always want to make sure that what our team knows, what our team expects, we're ready for that, and it's going to change from day to day.
Yeah, similar to Milton, we also release reservations in a kind of 2-month block. So this Friday we're opening August. So we have a longer leeway when it comes to planning events. We try to plan them before the reservations for that month go live. So also the team that we have is the only team that we have. There's 6 front of house and then 10 in the kitchen. So that's again the 1-to-1 ratio of team to guests sitting in the room. So we work the same schedule, the same event, and again develop that personal connection with each guest. And when we do the cocktail events that I mentioned on Mondays, might be a smaller team. There's less food, there's less talking involved, and we also have guest chef, guest teams, guest bartenders coming in, and they bring their own staff as well. So we're able to alleviate and actually give our team a day off to welcome the other team. And then again, planning that out months in advance is definitely beneficial.
We're very similar to all of our full-time staff are salaried for the most part. That doesn't change. And then if an event calls for a bit more, we'll use casual labor to kind of staff up or staff down. But it's pretty standard compared to our regular service.
Great. All right. Let's see. So this kind of touches on the marketing piece. How important is customer feedback and market research in identifying new avenues for, either revenue or unique events? So what kind of research do you do in advance when thinking about what your programming is going to be?
I'll jump in. I mean, I think it's a very good question. We're obviously talking to our guests all the time and learning what they like, what they don't like, whether it's a given dish or something about service. One thing that came out of the pandemic again was we were shut down. So we ended up launching an outdoor dining pavilion for a 3-year stretch because we weren't able to dine indoors. And guests really, really started to enjoy being outside in the country, being 100 feet away from the garden. We've got some cows and ducks walking around. And so they were really intimate and close to it. And that is one of the reasons that we launched these garden tours and started thinking about, maybe we start the dining experience out in the garden for a course or a drink before we go upstairs. So some of the ideas and kind of some of the evolution of the restaurant has just been through almost organic feedback or just kind of seeing what guests enjoy without a predetermined outcome.
I would say we definitely do a lot of market research, I guess is the phrasing. So comparing our wine pairing prices, for example, to other restaurants of similar caliber in the area and viewing their Tock profiles and then on our end, seeing which add-ons or supplements are being purchased on the prepay side, on the reservation side versus how many we actually get day of as they sit down and kind of comparing and changing wording based on on that. Ideally trying to get more of the pre-selected pairings and supplements just so we can prepare appropriately. But obviously if no one's pre-selecting anything within the one night, everyone's on a pairing, then we kind of are curious about is it our wording that we used in person? Is it just the salesmanship, or is it something that we can do on the written side, on the reservation side, to kind of entice more and pre-select that option?
Yeah, we always talk internally about how there's some psychology with the different pricing, options that you offer. So it's interesting that you guys are looking into that.
We're always looking for feedback as well. I'll pop in because we're talking about Tock. Tock offers a feedback option that you can put on after a guest books an experience that sends an email that you can get feedback from Tock. And it's great for us. It's not Yelp feedback or Google feedback, where somebody, if they had a great experience, a bad experience, whatever it is, they can go and give us feedback. Most of the time it's a great experience, but there's guests that don't use those features, that don't put reviews on Google or Yelp or something. And it allows us to have that one-on-one connection and know what guests enjoy about coming into the restaurant, what they are feeling like is not of value or is something they would or wouldn't come back for. And always internally, that's going to direct us what experiences we can then offer new guests, because those are the people that are coming into our building.
Yeah, goes back to, again, just listening, listening to what people are telling you. All right. And then just one last question here, more of a logistics question. So in terms of who is creating events, how much oversight do you all have as general managers? Do you have an events team? Do you, listen to ideas from your staff? How does that all work?
So for John, it's, obviously areas of responsibility kind of are constantly evolving and flowing as needed. So in terms of creating the experiences, it's generally either our director of hospitality or the assistant manager that's kind of overseeing the books, as we call them, planning the events and monitoring the releases, monitoring which days are booking more than not and which days we have to start offering friends and family or reaching out to contacts that we have. But it's definitely it's a team effort, but there are definitely individuals that it is their kind of area or their lane, so to speak, to really dive in and monitor.
It's definitely a team effort for us as well, but there's always a lean towards the people that have experience in each of our roles. Our bartenders, our bar team is always going to take the lead on creating our bar focused, our cocktail focused events. They have more knowledge than I do. They're creative. They know what's going to sell because they're in front of the guests more often than I am. Our sommelier is going to have the connections with our distributors and with the wine community in Charlotte, and is going to be able to curate those events that really bring in, whether that's industry people or those connections. And I'm not the one that's the most creative person in the building. I'm not creating the food. I'm not creating the cocktails. So if I listen to our team and build things around what their strengths are, then we're always going to have more success than if I'm pushing, hey, this is the best I do here.
I'd echo those thoughts. I think from logistics standpoint, we have 1 to 2 people that are in Tock on a regular basis, and that's their domain in terms of the actual execution. In terms of concepts, we'll also work with the client at times if we're doing a private event. One of the cool things that we've done with Tock recently is whether we're working with a wine club or a private company, you can do private links where it's not visible to the public and it's just available to that group. And so it's a way to have that date removed from circulation, but you're almost offering access, which is something nice for people where, hey, we're doing this exclusive thing for you. It's private. And so sometimes we'll work with that club themselves and get a sense of, would this resonate with your membership? What have you done in the past? So there's a bit of a collaboration there as well. Yeah,
that's great. I'm sure John, your staff appreciates getting involved in things. And, you're exactly right that anytime you have that private access to something, it just feels so much more special. So, all right. Well, thank you, all three of you, for your insights. We are going to wrap up here. For any questions that we didn't get to from our viewers, our team will follow up with answers via email. We will also be sharing the recording of this webinar in an email later today, along with some steps on how to get started creating, events, special days, some of this unique program. Thank you again to Andrew, Milton, and John for sharing your insights and experiences. And of course, thank you to everyone who took the time, out of their day today to join us. We hope today's discussion really got you thinking outside of just your standard reservations. If you are not on Tock's platform and would like to learn more about pricing and offerings, please head to exploretock.com/join. Thank you again, everyone, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your day.